Preserving our past, our present, and our future is dependent on how we protect our natural and cultural resources. Sustainable growth in land use is our only reliable guide through these complicated climate times.
So again, welcome. I'm Kim Hosen. I'm with the Prince William Conservation Alliance. We are a nonprofit organization. What? We are a nonprofit organization that has been working for 20 years with community support, and we're working to support sustainable development, healthy communities, promote environmental stewardship, and create opportunities for residents to participate in the decisions that affect the quality of our communities. We live in a really special locality. We're just so fortunate. Prince William is rich in natural resources. It's actually the only county in the entire Chesapeake Bay watershed that spans from tidal wetlands along the Potomac River to a mountain. In between there, the rising of the land slowly across the county creates a landscape that is unique and is really the foundation of our appeal. Prince William, hold on. This is better instead of coming over. PWCA is always working to protect natural areas. One of our successes is Merrimack Farm Wildlife Management Area in Oaksville, which is permanently protected through a partnership between PWCA, the Department of Wildlife Resources, and Marine Corps base Quantico, who worked together to raise $3 million to purchase the property and create the first wildlife management area in Northern Virginia, and it still is the only one. Merrimack Farm protects 100 acres of contiguous floodplain wetlands, forests, which is really a quickly disappearing natural area. It's also prime habitat for bluebells, which we celebrate every spring with the Bluebell Festival. It protects 1 mile of shoreline along Cedar Run, which flows to Broad Run, where at Dove's Landing they meet and they form the Occoquan River. All this is part of the Rural Crescent, which was created in 1998 by a 5-3 board vote and strong community support. And the 5-3 vote, the 5 votes that adopted the Rural Crescent were all from the development area. Tonight we're here to talk about clean drinking water, national parks, forests, and opportunities to protect our remaining green spaces. Nearly all the Rural Crescent lies within the Occoquan Reservoir watershed, which plays a key role in protecting the quality and quantity of water in the reservoir. Supervisors are considering many development proposals which together represent the biggest land use change the county has seen in more than 20 years. On June 7th, at their 2 p.m. meeting, supervisors are hosting a work session on water quality and water supply in Prince William County with speakers from staff, Fairfax Water, the Northern Virginia Regional Commission, Department of Environmental Quality, and the Occoquan Watershed Monitoring Lab. You can help with all our efforts here by keeping informed, attending meetings, and sharing your views with supervisors, planning commissioners, delegates, state senators, and all your friends. So first off, we're going to hear from Rob Hartwell, and I got to take my papers so that I can get my little introduction here, who we are really fortunate to have here today. Rob is the president of Riverbend Estates, next to Belmont Bay in eastern Prince William County. He is a former Virginia Potomac River Commissioner, Fairfax County Planning Commissioner, and he's the president of the Northern Virginia Park Authority Foundation. He's going to say a few words and set the stage for the program tonight. Thank you for being here, Rob.
Thank you, Kim. It's a great honor to be here and speak for this great organization and to work with Kim and many of you in this room that have done so much for the environment countywide, and it's much appreciated. I grew up on Mason Neck in Fairfax County, and I'm sure a a lot of you know that my mother was Elizabeth Hartwell, the Mason Lake National Wildlife Refuge is named after my mom. And I tagged along with her from the time I was a tot to all the meetings, was involved in all the battles in the environment. And I learned an awful lot, and I learned most of all what one person can do. And that just, Kim Hosen is possibly that person, Elena may be that person, and those people are in this audience today. One of my pastimes that I loved to do was just to walk along the river. Our TV set wasn't worth a darn in those days, in the 1960s. No good reception, Brad mirrors didn't work, we didn't even have a color TV when I was that old. And in any case, one of the things that I loved to do was walk along the river, see how many snakes I could count, and then I would write my name in the algae in the Potomac River. And one day it was so thick, I wrote my name in the river, and then I just walked in the direction of the current. And 1 mile later, at the entrance to the Great Marsh, I could still read my name in the algae. The Potomac in those days was foul, and my only solution was to swim on the other side of Halloween Point, where the pollution didn't reach. The pollution was there, the algae and the dead fish kills weren't on that side of the river. But I swam in that river and survived meningitis, and I probably am immune, haven't been sick in many, many years. So, the point that I wanted to really make is that the Potomac watershed, the Occoquan watershed, which Occoquan feeds into the Potomac, of course, are precious resources. And Fairfax County went through the huge battle of downzoning. They were the leaders in this area in the Commonwealth of Virginia. They took on the developers, the supervisors in those days, downzoned 38,000 acres in the western part of Fairfax County and along the Occoquan watershed, specifically to protect the Occoquan watershed. And 5-acre lots, which was a big accomplishment in those days for Fairfax. 1982, the board passed it, and then it went to it was challenged in court, went to the Virginia State Supreme Court in 1985. It was upheld, much to the shock of many of the development people in the development community. Washington Post was shocked. I read the article yesterday that I read years ago about it. So now we're at a stage where we have huge development plans, data centers, which have a huge impact on the watershed. In the Rural Crescent and in Belmont Bay. Bill McDow is here from Belmont Bay. We have the doubling of the sun, more than the doubling of the number of units that are proposed for development in Belmont Bay, and literally thousands of apartments in the North Woodbridge area planned. And all of the runoff from the asphalt, all of the runoff from this new development is going to go directly into the Occoquan watershed. And somebody's got to pay attention, somebody on the board of supervisors, all of them need to pay attention. And we need to bring that to their attention. So what we can't do is go back and reverse what Fairfax County did and what Prince William County has already done in terms of downzoning. We can't go back and allow the river to become befouled again. We can't let our kids walk along the shoreline if they can access it and write their names again in the river as it smells from the dead fish, and we can't go swimming in it again or skiing like many people are doing these days. And we're heading in that direction if we allow this rampant development in the Rural Crescent, in the east, all over Prince William County. And some of the developments, specifically the data centers, are going to have a huge impact on water quality. And we have we don't have the capacity for them either. When I was on the Fairfax County Planning Commission and chaired the environmental subcommittee, I took every single development individually on its own and decided whether to support it or not and what proffers we wanted to get. In this case, you have so many, it's so difficult to do that, and we're going to have to redouble our efforts. In the east, I think we're willing to support you and do what we can do to help you in the western part of the county. But we have our own issues too, including in the Washington Redskins State plan right around the corner. In conclusion, we have a great panel today. We have leaders on each of these different areas and issues. And I'm looking forward to hearing from the panel. And the one message that I want to leave you is we have to keep up the pressure and we can't go back. Thank you.
And I'm going to introduce Deshundra Jefferson, who is a Montclair resident and a smart growth activist who is going to talk about racial inequities in land use. Thank you for being here, Deshundra.
Thank you very much. I'm just trying to look over to see if my friend Harry Wiggins is still here. Because I want to give a special acknowledgement. I guess he left. Oh, he's here. So Harry's on the water board. He lives on the Occoquan Reservoir. And he just told me he knows more about the watershed than I will ever know. He also said he didn't want to hear from me. So I was going to give him a few minutes. If you want to walk out before I start talking.
No, we just record.
All right. Yes, this is being recorded. I was just going to do that as a favor for you, Harry. I joked at a BOCS meeting that I went to a few months ago that I was becoming a frequent flyer at these types of meetings. I had hoped that when we elected a new slate of candidates to the board, I wouldn't need to be there. The people who we elected supposedly represented my values, or so I thought. Being on the board is a relatively unsexy job. And land use issues are probably one of the most boring aspects. But it's also one of the most important. That's because it's our vision for our future. It's our gift to our children. Back in January, I wrote an op-ed in the Prince William Times undercutting several false promises made by the wealthy applicants along Pageland Lane, looking to sell their property for data centers. These applicants made a lot of false promises. Millions of dollars of revenue, money for parks, money for schools, equitable land use practices. Kittens and puppies for everyone, I don't know. I mean, they have a lot of promises in there. But you know, and let me tell you, as the old saying goes, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. The one argument that most bothered me is the claim that building data centers along Pageland Avenue would create more racially equitable land use policies. I'm going to veer from my remarks. My parents grew up in Jim Crow, Mississippi. Look at me here. My mom literally grew up picking cotton. It is fundamentally offensive that they are using race and equity as buzzwords to push through an application that would hurt us all. The argument is that the Rural Crescent is exclusionary zoning, which none of them had a problem with, Harry. And that by selling their land, they are creating more opportunities for the entire county to generate revenue. It's an offensive talking point designed to shame people to support their application. But when you start to scratch the surface, you see it's not true. Let me give you guys a few things to chew on. First, data centers create very few permanent jobs. In fact, more and more of them are relying on temporary contractors. Second, building in the Occoquan Reservoir watershed is a seriously bad idea. You know, Harry, you can disagree with me on this, and you can educate me later. Because my degrees from Columbia and Johns Hopkins are meaningless. The National Ocean Service defines a watershed as a land area that channels rainfall and spillwell to creeks, streams, and rivers, and eventually to outflow points such as reservoirs, bays, and the ocean. So what does that mean? It means all the runoff from construction, buildings, cars, etc. in the watershed goes into the Occoquan Reservoir, which is where we, on the east end of the county, get our drinking water from. And third, are data centers really going to bring the revenue they promise? We have at least 26 reservoirs and more in the pipeline. So where's the money? Well, we aren't taxing them properly for one thing, so the board wants to add more. It's like discount pricing when you buy volume. And let's look at Loudoun County. Data center capital of the world, at least for now. Loudoun is seeking ways to diversify their revenue stream because they realize they've become over-reliant on data streams. But that's not smart growth, y'all. It's insanity. And since my op-ed, I've learned even more. We have plenty of land in the data center overlay district to build more data centers. A reporter from the Prince William Times verified that it's fact. Bill, you've done a great job and some great research. The National Parks Conservation Association, in partnership with CEA engineers, did an analysis which found that greenlighting the Prince William Beltway could result in 57,000, I'm sorry, I'm bad with math, y'all, tons of sediment dumped into the Occoquan Reservoir. For note, folks, you're going to hear from smarter people than I, but not Harry Wiggins. Thank you for laughing, Harry. At least you do have a good sense of humor. I'm not sure. I'm having fun right now, bro. I'm having a lot of fun. You're going to hear from smart people than I who will do a deep dive into these issues. But I want everyone here to challenge assertions that the wealthy landowners pushing for these changes are doing so for equitable reasons. Exclusionary zoning seems to be a new buzzword for developers. On the screen is an article from Rural Crescent that outlines why exclusionary zoning is a hoax. We are talking about redlining, which is a serious, historic, racist practice that hurt people who look like me. Developers are using the term exclusionary zoning to challenge zoning ordinances that limit their ability to maximize profit. And I'm here to say no. You're not using me. You're not using my community. You're not using my harm, my hurt, my legacy to remove zoning restrictions that protect us all. There is nothing exclusionary about opening the Rural Crescent for data center development. If you want to talk about equitable land use policies, look at who's going to be hurt by that. It's not going to be the local landowner selling their land. It's not going to be the people in the western end of the county. It's going to be people in Montclair. It's going to be people in Belmont Bay. It's going to be people on the east side of the county. And here's the problem. You can't unring that bell. That's why I said this is about our vision and a gift for our children. Once the damage is done, it's done. It's really hard to correct. The question is, what kind of risk do you want to take with your children's future? That's not a risk I want to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley, that was terrific. Now I'm going to introduce Julie Bolhouse, which I've got my notes. She works for the Piedmont Environmental Council and is the land now. Close enough to that? Yeah. And she's going to talk about roads of I-County Parkway, which also has a great impact in East Prince William, and the effect on watersheds. So thank you, Julie.
Thank you so much, Kim. And thank you guys for having me here. As Kim said, I'm the Director of Land Use with Piedmont Environmental Council, and I'll just give you a gesture when I'm ready to change slides. So today I'm going to talk to you about the costly road expansions that are being proposed in the Rural Crescent of Prince William County and what impact that has on the community. So you can't see this at all. I was worried you wouldn't be able to. But this is the current transportation plan for Prince William County. And what I want to point out on this current transportation plan is that honestly, Prince William County already hasn't been very good at planning for transportation. We spend so much money on roads in our rural areas. So if you notice that green line going up to the north there, that's Route 15. Well, the plan is to widen that all the way up to the Loudoun County border. I don't really know why we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to widen Route 15 all the way up to the Loudoun County border. There is peak traffic loads, but generally when you drive, because I drive that road all the time, just so you know, I drive it on a regular basis because I live in Leesburg and I work in Warrenton, and I also come down very often to Fauquier or to Prince William to bring my children to different activities. So I drive this road on a regular basis, and I drive it on the weekends, and I drive it on the weekdays. And I'll tell you that, yes, there are peaks sometimes on this road, but you are always moving, and you're always moving at least 45 miles per hour. And there are still tractors that use this road because there's still farmland on this road. So widening this road is $100 million+ going towards opening up that land to development, because that's what it does, it adds capacity. We're gonna talk a little bit more about that, but I also wanna go a little bit further south to Route 28, where we're also talking about widening the road to 4 lanes. Route 28 is another rural road. Once you get out past Nokesville and you're going west into Fauquier County, that's all farmland. And Fauquier County has no plan of widening Route 28 on their side. So this has a huge impact on not just the landowners in the immediate proximity, but as Deshundra pointed out so well, they can sell their land and they can benefit from it. It's the taxpayers that wind up holding the bag. And obviously, many of the landowners don't want to see their land changed for farmland. They don't want to leave, but it's really the taxpayers that wind up holding the bag. So moving on to the next slide, I've got some articles that I pulled from the newspapers. As you can see, Prince William County gets a lot of their funding. The first article up there, $440 million. That was what they applied for to the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority for transportation funds. They didn't get all of that. They got a fraction of that. But the point is that they're trying to fund all of these huge mega projects in the rural end of the county, not where we need our transportation dollars spent. We do need transportation improvements. I want to be really clear. We do absolutely need transportation improvements, but you know where we really need to be spending those dollars? We need to be spending them in our core. We need to be spending them in the communities where there is heavy congestion, and we can make good improvements to our mobility within those areas so that people can walk around. We can make sidewalk improvements. We can make rapid bus transit lanes. We can make bike lanes. We can put better trail networks in. We can enhance our communities. I know my husband grew up in Manassas, right along that 28 corridor, and it's still, to this day, when I first met him 25 years ago, it was a nightmare, and it's still a nightmare because we are not spending our transportation dollars in the right way. So I also just wanted to point out the capital improvement plan. As you can see, 75% of our capital improvement plan, and that's capital expenditures, are being dedicated to transportation. And that's a good question to ask our elected officials. How does that compare to the rest of the region? Because I think it's more. I don't know. I have not done the calculation, but it looks really high to me. All right, moving on. So this is the Route 15 corridor that I was talking about before. I just wanted to show you an area of what it looks like. It's completely rural. And what happens when you widen that road to 4 lanes? Yeah, people might start moving through there faster, but it also adds capacity and it attracts development. And part of the way they're going to pay for portions of it, it won't pay for all of it, but they'll pay for portions of it, is by allowing development, by allowing subdivisions to come in so that those developers proffer some of those transportation funds. Key is they never pay for all of it. All right, next slide. And this is what we're looking at doing now. So not only have we been doing our transportation planning in Prince William poorly, we're continuing to do it poorly. We're looking at widening additional road networks or road systems out in our rural area. Now, one of the sites that's been in the newspapers a lot is the Digital Gateway proposal. And part of that Digital Gateway proposal is to widen Page 1 lane to 4 lanes in the divided highway. Well, that's part of the Bi-County Parkway, which is a route that was proposed back in 2005. You can read some information about it from the Northern Virginia Transportation Alliance. Their reasoning for the route, I have to look at it because it doesn't make any sense to me. But the reasoning is for a north-south connection between Prince William and Loudoun County. It would cost upward of $440 million. They also say it's a good connection to Dulles. Well, first of all, it's going to the back side of Dulles, so that's not really a great connection to Dulles. Second of all, there already is lots of connections between Prince William and Loudoun County. Like I just said, I bring my kids down here on a regular basis. I drive down here on a regular basis. There's Route 28, which moves very smoothly because we made transportation improvements to it that were good decisions. And we have the connection on Route 15, and there's multiple other roads that you can get to between Loudoun and Prince William. It is also part of the Outer Beltway. The Outer Beltway is a connection that goes all the way up from I-95 and would bring you all the way to Route 7. This would actually induce more more vehicle trips on Pageland Lane and on this corridor. Because one of the things I want to point out is if you look at that little red blob in the middle there, you'll see that that red line goes beside Manassas Battlefield and through a very historically sensitive area. It's been very difficult for them to get the Bi-County Parkway through that area. That is the area that is in the Digital Gateway proposal. Once they get that section of the Outer Beltway completed, the other sides are already completed. This is already on Loudoun County's plan to widen North Star Boulevard all the way down to Saunders Lane. So it's already in the plan. The only part left if they widen Pageland Lane is Saunders Lane, unless they try to go up Gum Springs. But I think they're still going to try to go up Saunders Lane, which was what was proposed back in 2005, and that's what's shown on that other map of the Bi-County Parkway. It's also what's on our PEC map there. All right, next slide. And this is just showing you the aerial of what that area looks like. And again, you can see it is a rural area that we're talking about widening to 4 lanes with a trail on the outside of it. It would completely transform that area. It would lead to sprawl subdivisions. It would lead to incredible amounts of impervious surface, and all of that has a huge impact on the environment, on the groundwater, on the water quality, all of these different aspects, and it has a huge impact on the taxpayer because they're not going to pay for all of this. Like I said, they may pay for a portion of it, but they won't pay for all of it. Next slide. All right, Route 28, that's also in the draft land use plan. This blue blob is not in the current land use plan for Prince William County. This area that's in the blue blob is planned for agriculture. Now it's being replanned in this new draft land use as industrial employment area, which includes everything from distribution centers to asphalt plants to you name it. This will have huge implications on the Route 28 corridor. It will have huge implications on all of the roads in this area. You can almost guarantee that all of these roads in this area will also need to be blown out to accommodate this. And how much more does that cost the taxpayer of Prince William County? And again, just to show you the aerial of what this area looks like, you can see the Manassas airport over there in the corner. There's basically nothing out to Fauquier County, and there's nothing in Fauquier County. This is all rural land. It is farmed, it's actively in cornfields and soybean fields and cattle and equestrian uses and all of those things. So it is currently agricultural land. Next slide. So how do road extensions and widenings induce sprawl? Next slide. They enhance accessibility to so you have a parcel of land. By widening and extending these roads, that land becomes more accessible to whatever proposal you're bringing in. If you need left turn lanes into your site, you have more land to work with. If you are trying to build out on a rural road, that extension out to your area opens it up. It also adds capacity because you now, when you do your traffic impact analysis, which is generally required for most of your development, now you're going to be better able to meet that without putting huge amounts of money into proffers that you would be giving to the county. That's monetary funds that you would be giving to the county. It also enhances the marketability of the site. So we're not just, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but we're not just talking about development, because when a developer buys a parcel, sometimes it's just land speculation, and that land is actually being held for 10, 20, maybe even 30 years. You might not see a development anytime soon, but they make immediate money off of just simply changing that accessibility and that capacity or that land use plan or that zoning on that property. Next slide. So how do you determine the value of land? So the things that developers are looking at when they're buying a parcel or they're trying to figure out the pricing for their parcels, they look at the physical attributes. Okay, well, what kind of site restrictions do we have on this site? Do we have streams going through it? Do we have steep slopes? What other things that might hinder or make it easier to develop on the site? The infrastructure accessibility, where's the sewer lines, where's the water lines, where's the road? If you've already expanded the road for them, if you've already brought the sewer out, or even if you've made it so that the sewer can come out, then you've made that land much more attractive for development. Land use is permitted. Again, what's it permitted to do on the land? If it's currently only allowed to be agricultural, and you can do agricultural uses and agropayments, things like that, there's a limited amount of use, limited type of use that you can do on the land. Once you start to replant it for something like industrial employment, then you have a much higher amount that you can charge for that land because there's a lot more that you can do on that land. There's a lot more possibilities, and it becomes much more valuable. Also, the type of development regulations that are in place, the looser those regulations are, again, the more attractive it is to different buyers because, hey, the setbacks are smaller, the height restrictions are less, whatever, all of those development restrictions, and then also the future plans for the area. So you look at the county and you look at what else is planned around that area. Well, does it look like we're going to turn the entire Rural Crescent into an industrial sprawling area? Well, then that's going to make it more attractive to industrial sprawling type of uses. Also, the current and projected supply and demand, and I say current and projected because sometimes they're looking at the 20-year time of this property. And then development may happen, like I said before, in tandem, or it may happen later. So don't just think about what the market looks like right now, look at what the market might look like in the future. All right, next slide. But growth, will it pay for itself? Because we keep hearing this growth is going to pay for itself, so we don't need to worry about it. They're going to build their own sewer lines, they're going to build their own roads, and we don't need to worry about it. Next slide. Nope. Developer contributions often fall short of the real cost. So when you start to look at, the road, the proffers that are put forward by the developer, a lot of that analysis is coming from their own consultants. Obviously, it's reviewed by the county staff, but it's coming from their own consultants. So a lot of times it's very low. The other thing is the project may not be implemented for 10 years, so there's inflation costs that were never factored in. So anyways, the real costs wind up being higher, and then the developer only covers their fair share, not the gaps in between. So what I was talking about before, let's say digital gateway, let's say we get one data center on the southern end, next to Manassas National Battlefield, and then we get one in the northern end. Well, let's say there's no market for all the ones in between. The road still needs to be built because you can't just build part of the road there. You can't just build part of the road up there. You can't just build part of the sewer. You have to build the entire thing. You can't just leave it half built. So what winds up happening is they're waiting for the rest of the funds to come in from the other developers. But once the road is built, you're not going to get any proffers for the road because it's already built. So it winds up falling onto the taxpayer to fill in those gaps as you go along the way. And the other thing is when the market starts to come back down, there's also more pressure. And actually, sorry, that's the next one. Well, actually, sorry, I'll get to that one in a second. So poor quality infrastructure, that's things like, let's put in a packaged treatment plant out in the rural area. Well, 10 years later, it winds up failing. And then we have to extend sewer out to it, things like that. Next slide. And then pressure to invest in the infrastructure when the service starts to decline. That's what I was talking about with the gas. So once the water pressure, let's say you have a sewer line that just dead ends and we need the water pressure is not adequate, or you have a road that narrows into a single lane and then winds back out to 2 lanes. Everyone's like, this is ridiculous. Why is this not widening the entire way? And there's pressure from the public to see those services improved, but there's also pressure from the developers to say, hey, I'll give you economic development if you bring the services out. You've got to, if you want economic development, you have to provide the services. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. Next one. Long-term liability for maintaining this infrastructure. This is something that the response to this I always hear is, well, VDOT's going to pay for it. Well, who pays for VDOT? It's us. And it's like the sewers. Well, the ratepayers are going to pay for it. That's still us. It still winds up falling on all of us to pay for the maintenance of these facilities that are sprawling out everywhere. And then the last one is community services. We're talking about capital infrastructure. That's all we're talking about. We're not talking about the community services that are needed. So when you're talking about residential sprawl, that can be really expensive because we're talking about school seats. We're talking about community parks and things like that.
Fire and rescue, police.
When you talk about data centers, there's less services. Admittedly, there's a lot less, but there's still fire services. There's still police and rescue. There's still services that are needed. And then I think it's my final slide. Then I just want to mention the externalities of sprawl. No one ever thinks about the externalities of sprawl, so you never realize what you got until it's gone. As the old song goes, Halo in Paradise, and you don't know what you got until it's gone. Habitat loss, fragmentation, water quality degradation, urbanization effects on streams. What that means is the base flow gets radically changed when you put in a lot of impervious surface. So basically you wind up completely wiping out our rural streams because they can't survive in the system where the base flow goes down to nothing in the summer and spikes every time it rains. Also, groundwater recharge is heavily reduced, which provides that base flow for our streams and recharges the Occoquan Reservoir. And then the loss of agricultural land and tourism. I like going out to the wineries, but I guess if they all get turned into data centers here in Prince William County, I guess I'll have to go walk here. Impact on recreational resources. The parks are so enjoyable down here to come and visit. The Manassas Battlefield, the Prince William Forest Park. Those places are hugely impacted if the surrounding environment winds up becoming industrial or sprawling residential. And then impact to air quality and increased traffic, because the more people who are living out in the rural area of Prince William County, the more people have to drive. That's why our transportation dollars need to go into our port, so that more people can live and work and play in the community without getting into their car. So that's my spiel. I'll pass it to the next speaker.
The next speaker is Bill McDow.
Yep.
I don't know if you wanted to take questions at the end.
Can I ask you a question?
We were going to do that at the end. Can I wait?
Yeah, it's apropos to now, but it can wait.
Okay, let's do that. Our next speaker is Bill McDow, who's been a Prince William County resident since 1978. When he and his wife Ann moved to the Belmont community in 2000, they were thrilled to live in a beautiful planned community with lots of green open space and many developer-promised amenities. But now, failed promises and a new zoning request could nearly double the Belmont Bay residences in ecologically damaging ways. Bill is here to talk about some of his concerns as they relate to urban stormwater runoff and resource protection areas. Bill?
Thank you, Kim. I'd just like to start with a thought, and it's a theme that's brought up with the first speaker. We do not inherit the land from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children to make or make another farmer. I'm asking that the Belmont Bay developer not be allowed to fill in a critical stormwater pond and avoid restoration in the runoff area and replace them with a dog park and beach. Properly managing urban stormwater runoff and the resource protection area in Belmont Bay are key critical elements for protecting water quality before entering the Occoquan River, the Chesapeake Bay tributary. Proposed developer actions will severely jeopardize an already fragile environment. Managing urban stormwater runoff falls under the Chesapeake Bay Act and Preservation Ordinance. That's federal. Chesapeake Bay Foundation says stormwater is the only major source of Bay pollution trending in the wrong direction today. How can we help reverse that trend? The Chesapeake Bay Foundation looks at all the states that feed into the Chesapeake Bay, all the tributaries that goes all the way back over across the mountains in Virginia, but Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey, lots of states feed into the Chesapeake Bay itself. And they grade them and grade them in different areas. And so stormwater is one of the major things that you take a look at what's happening year to year. This is an overview of Belmont Bay Community, and it's sort of a north-south axis here. Route 1 and Woodbridge are to the west and northwest, to your upper left. Businesses are west of Dawson Beach Road, that's to your left, before the river tracks. Occoquan River, Fairfax, Belmont Bay is to the east, over to the right, and Occoquan Bay National Wildlife Refuge is to the southeast, with the Tony River another 3 miles beyond that. Belmont Bay Community is in the middle, right in the most of the blue area that you see right there. With a little over 1,500 residences made up of group estates, Rob's community, Belmont Bay HOA, and a second HOA that was created by the developer in 2018. So we've got 2 HOAs in this whole area here. Belmont Bay HOA was developed in 1999 around an 18-hole golf course with healthy green open spaces. The developer closed the course in 2015, and then last year filed a rezoning application to stack and pack an additional 1,390 new residences under the second HOA into this space. And this would nearly double our total to over 2,900. So back when Preston arose, the grandfather had a vision. He was run up to the New York Times. He was applauded by the Virginia State Legislature. He had a good vision. As it's passed down through generations, we see some differences happening. Next slide, please. A prevailing wind and storms are from the west-northwest, coming up to the left there. I don't know if you can see these black arrows here, but our elevation drops dramatically from Route 1 down to the river into the bay. Line swells sweep through, creating tremendous amounts of stormwater runoff, flowing down through Belmont Bay into the river or to the refuge, carrying trash, debris, chemicals, chemical fertilizers, lots of things with it. This runoff follows the arrows. If you can see those black arrows at the top, there's some that are coming out to the right, and you can see stormwater ponds there. Right? We'll be talking about them in just a minute. But this drains that carry 6 stormwater ponds we have built around the different parts of the community. And down through the RPA, the Resource Protected Area, that's the light blue that you see along the river line there. It's the last 100 protected area for natural filtration before it goes into the river. So these ponds in the RPA are the key filtration elements, along with the topsoil, maybe 10 to 15%, and topsoil the rest. Next slide, please. And the developer has a plan. It's in yellow here. It shows up. You see it's all the light yellows around. Roughly doubling the residences in Belmont Bay, creating huge environmental challenges for managing this runoff. It's an excessive amount of development in this small area. Fairfax County has already voiced its concern about the dense overdevelopment and impact of the waterways. New residences would significantly cut into our green spaces, reducing the natural filtration and increasing levels of fertilizer and debris. The stormwater also follows a layer of hard marine clay, 6 to 8 inches below the topsoil, resulting in many unexpected problems, such as rising water tables, foundation settling cracks, leaking conduit basement garages, sinkholes showing up on the walking paths. 18 months ago, the developer clear-cut a 30-yard swamp through the RPA to the river and covered the swale down the river to cut through. It was clear-cut inside all the trees and vegetation, and they concreted the swale. There's not going to be any filtration of the concrete there. But that was just done to improve drainage from a stormwater pond. And it's next to GMB's Potomac Sound Center. Ironically, the Sound Center's mission is focused on keeping the water pure going into the Occoquan and the Chesapeake tributaries. Now the developers are saying that pond's a failure. Let me point out what that pond is, just so you know what it is. This is George Mason right here. This is the big pond right here. I'm going to show that again. It's not clear whether the developers are trying to build on our 100-year floodplains here. So when they cut that 18 months ago, the developer clear-cut that 30-yard swath through the RPA to the river and covered it with concrete. They took out 2 60-year-old trees in doing it. They were there even before the brothers family bought the property. They were cut down. So now they say the pond's a failure. They plan to fill it, replace it with a large destination dog park, and put a children's beach in the RPA at the beach below. But left unsaid is how they plan to manage the significant amount of stormwater that feeds into that pond today. It's pretty much that whole third area there is going into that pond for filtration and down through the RPA. So let's look at the RPA. Next slide, please. That's a 100-foot buffer of regulated forests of environmentally sensitive land alongside or near shorelines or streams, rivers, and other waterways. And this is throughout the county. In their natural condition, RPAs protect water quality. They filter pollution out of stormwater runoff, reduce the volume of stormwater runoff, and they prevent erosion. The Chesapeake Bay Act mandates that we protect this buffer. Generally, no development, no land disturbance, or vegetation removal is allowed within it without prior approval and suitable replacement. The examples are changes to improve sightlines, creating paths, controlling erosion, clear cutting. Non-compliance is a violation of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance, and violators must develop and obtain approval for any all appropriate restoration plans, and may be subject to penalties. Next slide, please. So let's compare how Prince William County and Fairfax County manage the RPA today. I'm just going to hit the highlights. Prince William has its Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area Review Board. It's been vacant for the last 10 years. The board goes in sequence with the Board of Supervisors. terms of the Board of Supervisors. So our liaison in the county is Clay Morris, who is the Department of Public Works. By comparison, Fairfax has this exceptional review committee, the very active committee, focuses on any RPA land disturbance greater than 2,500 square feet. Well, that's about 25 living feet if you take RPA to 100 feet down. You can see some of the examples there also of what type of disturbances. So this is really a call to action. We could do better in Prince William County, especially given the level of development we're seeing across the county. We're obligated to provide oversight of how urban stormwater runoff is being managed due to its impact on the Occoquan Reservoir, water supply, and on the Chesapeake Bay. Allowing that pond to be replaced with a dog park is a failure to fulfill our obligation to our community and to the communities that rely on watershed for clean drinking water. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Kyle Hart with the National Parks Conservation Association, and NCPA was founded in 1919, and their mission to this day is to protect and enhance America's national parks, which they work tirelessly to protect all 423 units of the National Park Service, 2 of which are right here in Prince William County, Prince William Forest Park, and Manassas National Battlefield Park, which we were fortunate to have in both. And we're happy to have Kyle here with us today. Welcome.
Thanks everybody for being here. As Kim said, my name is Kyle Hart. I work for a nonprofit called the National Parks Conservation Association. And as Kim mentioned, Prince William County is extremely blessed to have 2 units in the National Park Service right in its backyard. The Prince William Forest Park, which is a green oasis 30 miles from Washington, D.C., 16,000 acres of forest, trails, campsites, and the like. It had 325,000 visitors in 2021, supports 258 local jobs, and resulted in more than $21 million in visitor spending in 2020 alone. The other one is Manassas National Battlefield, which is obviously on the western end of the county. Manassas National Battlefield Park is a 5,000 acre land that obviously commemorates the site of 2 major Civil War conflicts, the first and second battles of Manassas. Over 516,000 people visited that site in 2021, contributing to $33 million in visitor spending and supporting 439 local jobs, according to the National Park Service. I'm here tonight mainly to talk about 2 particular developments. Proposal 21, I got a phone call from one of our members who lives in the county and said, hey, I got an email from Kim Hosen about this proposal at Prince William Forest Park to build data centers inside of the park. Have you heard of that? And I said, no, but it seems like something we should be involved in. And so I picked up the phone and I called Kim, and over a year and a half later, or almost a year and a half later, here we are. This proposal is inside of the congressionally authorized boundary of Prince William Forest Park, which means that 52 acres in the whole parcel is about 161 acres, could actually one day be National Park Service property. It could be trails, it could be vehicle access off of Route 234, Dumfries Road. It could be all of those things. Instead, currently, the county thinks maybe it ought to be data centers instead. That's a 52-acre parcel that's currently up for rezoning consideration. Of that 52 acres, a little more than 10 of those acres are on what the county resource office calls resource protection area, which is highly erodible soils in the headwaters of Quantico Creek. All literally everything that runs off of that site will end up immediately in Prince William Forest Park, and all of the park visitors, every time it rains, they will see that sediment, they will see that pollution, they will see that runoff. The other thing that is like of note is that Quantico Creek is an extremely high quality stream. The Park Service is extremely proud of the work that they've done to protect that resource, and other people actually come in and study Quantico Creek as like a benchmark for what water quality could be if we did everything right. And so this proposal is a step in the complete wrong direction for the long-term protection of the stream, for Quantico Creek, and for National Park Service resources. The other proposal that I wanted to touch on, which is obviously, interestingly enough, the one that has garnered the most attention, I think, across the board, is the Prince William Digital Gateway. We were literally like just off of kind of the heels of kind of a vote advancing the Potomac Technology Park of Prince William Forest Park when we learned of this proposal, the Prince William Digital Gateway proposal. This is a 2,133 acre proposal. As you can see, quite literally at Manassas National Battlefield Park. Many of the parcels are either directly across Asian land, or one of them, that north parcel, is literally adjacent to the park. You can look across the fence. You can be standing on Park Service property and imagine touching data centers on the other side of the fence. This proposal was called by the former superintendent of the national park, Brandon Wise. It was called the biggest threat to Manassas National Battlefield in 3 decades. The National Park Service stands firmly in opposition to this proposal. They stand firmly in opposition to the proposal of Prince William Forest Park. Despite that opposition from one of the most respected federal agencies out there, the Prince William County Board of Supervisors is advancing these as if nobody cares. To put this in perspective, this proposal would be 27 million square feet of data centers. That is the equivalent to building 4 Pentagons at Manassas National Battlefield. It is a huge footprint. This isn't like one little Walmart. This is 4 Pentagons at National Battlefield. I actually think, excellent. And then the other thing that Kim wanted me to really touch on, that I'm going to spend a little bit of time with, is the extensive threats to water quality. As Deshundra pointed out, NPCA worked with an environmental engineer to examine the potential negative impacts of water quality. One of the things that I think is maybe a bit of a no-brainer is when you build things, you expose soil. When you expose soil and it rains, that soil has the potential to end up in the watershed. If stormwater sites are not maintained, you have the potential to lose 45 tons of sediment per acre per year, which I think that math roughly comes to like the potential for 57,000 tons at the Prince William Digital Gateway, and I think it's a bunch more at the Potomac Technology Park as well. It's whatever 52 times 45 is per year. Anyways, I'm bad at math. It also, there are long-term impacts from what happens when you replace pervious surface like forest and farmland with impervious surface like roads, buildings, and the like. By our experts' analysis, that could be 7 million additional gallons per year flowing off of the site of Prince William Forest Park, which immediately flows into Quantico Creek, increasing the potential for flash floods downstream, increasing the potential for concerns of people in the park. And then because the footprint of the Prince William Digital Gateway is so large, it's potential for 280 million gallons a year of of additional stormwater into the Occoquan watershed directly. And so what that is that's basically an analysis of additional, like what converting forest and farmland into impervious surface. Their max proposed build out is like 1,200 acres. So the whole proposal is 2,133 acres. They're proposing to basically turn 1,200 of that into impervious surface. You factor in a bunch of rainfall data that I don't quite understand, and that's the number that comes out on the other side. The long story short of all of this, no matter how you shake it out, no matter how you look at it, if we move forward with these two proposals, you will negatively impact the water quality in both the Occoquan watershed and in 2 units of the national park. You will impact the feel and the scenic nature of 2 National Park Service units. And I think, also of note is you will be actively going against the National Park Service. Once again, in my opinion, one of the most respected and admired federal agencies that's out there, that are doing one of the most awesome jobs out there. You basically telling them, oh, we don't really care about what you think. Thanks for coming. So anyways, I will get off my soapbox now and pass it back to Kim, or yes, Frank, I don't know who's up next. Thanks.
And before Frank, we are going to get some words from Elizabeth Ward, who has a master's degree in chemical engineering from NYU and worked as a chemical environmental engineer at the US EPA, DC, DuPont, and Washington advisors. She served 10 years with the Prince William Soil Water Conservation District and currently is on the Prince William Sustainability Commission. We're really lucky to have her. So, Elizabeth.
Okay. So, if you live in the eastern portion of Prince William County, you should care about the fate of the Rural Crescent because it's about water. Your water. See this lovely chart? Blue. Eastern part of the county, all that water comes from the Occoquan. You are fed by the Occoquan. In an irony of infrastructure, the pink is fed by the Potomac River. It's the Corvallis plant that delivers the public water supply to the western part of Prince William County that is on public water, except for the Evergreen, which is groundwater from the area. The eastern part is from the Griffith plant, which is fed by the Occoquan. So, Prince William Service Authority purchases 15 million gallons of water a day on average from Fairfax Water, all for the Eastern Distribution Center and the Hoagley one, which are 2. Next slide. So here's a lovely picture. That building on the right is the Griffith plant, the newly reconstructed, rebuilt. On the left happens to be Occoquan. The Rural Crescent, when you have the Rural Crescent, it allows rainwater to flow gently into the land. All that pouring rain, when you look at it on the field, it isn't running off, a forested area, tree, native plants. It just gently percolates into the land and travels softly over the vegetation and feeds the aquifers that provide water to the private wells in the western part of Prince William County, the Evergreen water system, but also feeds the tributaries to Bull Run and the Occoquan River. We are the headwaters of the river that feed the Occoquan. Without water and clean water coming from the western part of Prince William County, Fairfax would have to do additional treatment. Development will impair the recharge of the groundwater, the aquifer, but also increase sediment and salt flow into the Occoquan Reservoir, reduce stream flow, and deteriorate water quality while increasing demand for water to feed more homes, businesses, data centers. Next slide. Because I'm lazy, I borrowed this slide from Fairfax Water. What's going on here is the salt level in the Occoquan has been rising for decades. It is reaching the critical stage. There is only one way to get the salt out of the water so it remains drinkable, and that is to desalinate, to install desalinization equipment. So when you take generally open areas and you develop them, stormwater cannot be absorbed into the ground. When people talk about it, what really happens is in an open area, rain falls, snow melts, about 50%, 45% of the water from precipitation is absorbed into the deep groundwater. About 15% goes into shallow groundwater. 10% is runoff, and then the rest gets picked up by tree roots and released by the trees back into the atmosphere. As you pave, as you build roads, as you put buildings in, water cannot go into the ground. It gets reduced to about 5%. But worse than that, you get the land becomes compacted, lawns, driveways, parking lots, so that when the rainwater hits it, it shoots off, it picks up velocity, so your runoff increases, which would explain some of Occoquan's stormwater problems. The more you build, the more lawns you have, the more compacted you are. So instead of the water going into the ground, instead of 75% or 70% going into groundwater, it shoots off as stormwater at a higher velocity, washing everything along with it. Road salt, oil, grease, it floods buildings, it takes dirt, and that's the problem. The salt comes from road salt. It also comes from human beings, from animal waste. You're thinking septic system? The Occoquan is 40 million gallons a day of recycled sewage. And flow down from commercial cooling data centers, it's salty. They soften the water so it doesn't clog up the pipes in the water cooling system. So they're adding more salt to the wastewater before they shoot it off. And then it ends up back in the Occoquan. So that is one of the problems. It's not only road salt. When you reach the critical point, the water can no longer be used, and we are dancing at the bottom there. You have to desalinate. And Fairfax Water says it'll take between $1 and $2 billion, a cost shared by the ratepayers for the water, to install that equipment. Plus, it takes a lot of energy to run it. So that our future and our children's future is our water. We can't allow it to be destroyed by paving roads and building data centers, warehouses, housing developments that will produce windfall profits. It's about money. You take the zoning of a piece of land that's for estate residential, that's the A1 in the Rural Crescent, that's worth about $50,000 to $60,000 an acre, depending on how hot real estate is. And you convert it to a data center, it's approaching $1 million an acre, plus the cost to pull out the septic system and knock down the house. But if you built nothing, it's worth $1 million an acre. So it's about money. But they're gonna leave the residents of Prince William County holding the bag for the water costs, and we haven't even gotten to the power costs. That's the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Our final speaker is Frank Washington, who I believe is born and raised in Prince William, and he is the spokesperson for the Coalition to Preserve Historic Thoroughfare, as well as cemeteries in the greater area. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thoroughfare is a small community nestled in the Rural Crescent. It was established by my ancestors who freed slaves and Native Americans in the 1800s. I was born and raised in Thoroughfare. My parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents were born and raised there as well. My family's roots are deep within the historical Rural Crescent of this county. I know firsthand what disasters can be in store when a decision for development is supposedly made in the name of progress. I saw it clearly as I watched one of my family cemeteries in Thoroughfare of over 75 to 100 graves of free slave and Native Americans completely bulldozed without pause, without accountability, without repercussions, without restoration, without compassion or empathy for my family or my community. I watched as they drank, danced, and partied with a live band at that cemetery just days after they bulldozed it. I watched a short time later as they set off fireworks from that same gravesite during the 4th of July celebration. This is a documented, recorded cemetery with the county, supposedly protected by codes and law. It has now been desecrated 3 additional times since the initial bulldozing, all in the name of greed and power, a sense of privilege. Other areas of the historical town of Thoroughfare have met the same fate or have been threatened with the same fate. A devastation of pain and loss that will haunt me and my family for the remainder of our lives. But it should remain with all of you as well, because Thoroughfare is not just my history, it is our collective history. If this can happen to a documented cemetery and other grave sites within an acknowledged historic town such as Thoroughfare, imagine what could be in store for the Asian area and its history. We all need to be keenly aware of the importance of what will be lost with this digital gateway project simply to fulfill the financial endeavors of a select few. A collective history that includes the battlefield and the areas surrounding it where free slave and Native American grave sites are scattered throughout. Areas where they built homes and settled during the Reconstruction period. Land associated with the plantation. The Pennsylvania plantation, which stretched along Pageland, was owned by the same family as the Cloverland plantation in Thoroughfare. Land where many families of color built several communities connected to Thoroughfare. Settlements known as Thornton, which existed on Pageland Road, and the Marble Hill settlement that existed in the area of Aldi Road, Marble Hill, and Sudley Road adjacent to and through Pageland. These areas of post-Civil War African American communities in such close proximity to a National Battlefield Park also represents and presents a unique rural and cultural landscape that tells the story of one of the most significant periods of American history, the Civil War, Reconstruction, and the formation of African American communities that developed during the post-Civil War era. developments that helped build Prince William County. This entire area of Pageland was considered a forsaken land by the plantation owners. So it was allotted to freed slaves who first rented in the area and then bought. Just as with Thoroughfare, they built thriving communities throughout. The Thornton Elliott School that once stood on the corner of Thornton Lane and Pageland is where many people of color had the opportunity to learn and read and write for the first time. A short distance from the school, a church, Mount Calvary, still stands as it has since the 1800s. A church which was the heart of the Pageland community of color. A church founded by Jenny Dean. Jenny Dean was born as a slave on the Pennsylvania plantation. After the war, she and her family settled and built their home on the very land that once held them captive, but now offered them freedom. Her dream in education was nurtured on Pageland. In short, she had a dream to build an industrial school where children of color could learn a trade to better their lives. Despite much opposition, she succeeded, and the Manassas Industrial School was built and it thrived. Many years later, it was turned into a middle school, and then an elementary school. That school still stands. Jenny Dean and her family are buried at the Mount Calvary Church. Though rebuilt twice, the Sudley Methodist Church, which still stands adjacent to Pageland, was a field hospital during the Civil War for both Confederate and Union soldiers. Where do you think the bodies of those soldiers that died in that hospital are resting? History leads us to the conclusion that many are scattered in unmarked graves throughout Pageland, alongside the free slave graves and cemeteries that we know exist there, and the surrounding areas of where these settlements and the plantation existed. This type of historical knowledge of an area they wish to destroy in the name of perceived progress is of vital importance. But it is only touching the surface of this area's history, especially when it comes to the cemeteries and grave sites. I have seen only minimal acknowledgement of cemeteries or graves in any proposal submitted supporting the sale of properties. The Pageland area warrants more than just a casual mention of cemeteries or graves. It warrants more than just a casual overview of the historical value of the area and its historic connection to the battlefield. Based on what I have experienced and learned with our struggles in Thoroughfare, we cannot trust that a fair and equitable mentality exists among those pushing to change that hallowed ground, which is the Rural Crescent, changing it to industrial. A destructive change that is unwarranted, sought primarily, as stated earlier, to put millions of dollars into the pockets of a select few. An onslaught of greed, power, and privilege that threatens our collective history, our environment as a whole, and in many ways, our entire way of life. When I began the coalition to Save Historic Thoroughfare, I had faith and trust in the county officials to work on behalf of this community. I had faith and trust that they would uphold protections and listen to the voices of those who had helped put them into office. I had faith, trust, and hope when I saw the diversity among the officials. I have found that faith in many ways found to have been misplaced. The message that I received loud and clear is that the voice of developers and the voice of the money trail that leads to personal gain and political endeavors, whether Democrat or Republican, whether black or white, is what drowns out our voices, despite the fact that it is our joint voices that put them into office. Life is a series of moments when we have to decide what it is we stand for, what we will fight for, where our compass of values and morality and integrity lies. Yes, there are challenges ahead of us, but as I found in Thoroughfare, there's power and strength when we come together unified, regardless of race, regardless of religion or political affiliation. When we realize that we are walking together daily on a common ground of history, not your or my history, but our collective history. You see, division is truly our real enemy, our only enemy. If we allow them to divide us with the various rhetoric that I hear being used to try and pit race against race, or the east side of the county against the west side of the county, that division will be our downfall. I have heard some supporters of this proposal for a digital gateway to the page refer to the battlefield as a place that only glorifies the Confederacy and racism. So why should we be concerned with it? They're trying to make the history of the battlefield and its connection to Paisley less significant to strengthen their stance by using the race card. They're calling the very people who have stood and walked by my side in our fight for thoroughfare racist because they support preserving Paisley. Again, attempting to use the race card to divide us. They're using the word exclusion or exclusionary in an attempt to divide us. Based on what we have experienced in thoroughfare, the word exclusion, supposedly on my behalf, should not be uttered by anyone fighting to continually destroy or allow the destruction of such a significant part of our history in this county. I do not point a finger at anyone here for something that happened over 200 years ago. I was not there, you were not there. It was not the Confederacy that bulldozed our family cemetery in thoroughfare. It was not the Confederacy that blocked our entrance to another cemetery. It was not the Confederacy that is now telling me that I can no longer continue to bury my relatives in 2 active cemeteries that we had, as we have for centuries. I recently had a sister-in-law that passed away. I struggled for weeks wondering whether or not where we would be able to bury her because these officials, people who are using the word exclusionary, are telling me that we no longer have a right to lay beside our ancestors. These are the people who are trying to pit me against you, stating that by standing up for Paisley, you're racist. They're not speaking for me. I've seen this in thoroughfare. I am living it today. So do not let them convince you that me or anyone else is accusing you of anything that happened over 200 years ago. Because that is not where we stand. Knowledge and understanding and wanting to preserve our history is not glorifying it. That history is the foundation of who we are collectively as a community. The bodies of Union soldiers, both black and white, were also scattered among the battlefield. The blood of both stained that landscape. If I were asked to make a choice, I see more elements of racism and disregard in the current destructive acts I have experienced in thoroughfare, and that I see in the proposal for the digital gateway, than I do in any feelings I have regarding the history or the existence of the battlefield. But for me, this is not about race. It is about fighting to protect the history and freedoms of the dead, some of which only found their freedom through death. My ancestors, your ancestors, which are our collective ancestors, our collective history, their freedom to rest in peace in our hollow ground, undisturbed by data centers, undisturbed by widening roads, undisturbed by power lines, undisturbed by divisiveness. Thank you.
Okay, and now we are finished with our speakers, and we're open for questions and comments, beginning with the gentleman back here. Can you come to the mic?
So my name's Eric Von. Let's turn this off.
I think it's on. Just.
Oh, here, come use this one.
Are they good? Okay, so my name's Eric Von Tersch, and I live over in Montclair. And my question is for that nice lady in the dark green shirt.
Come on up, Julie.
Julie. So Julie, one of the points I've heard mentioned in the past, recently, is in order to get people on this side of the county to pay attention to the issue which something is just for the other side of the county, is that part and parcel to building a data center near Manassas would be an expansion of 234 wider than it is currently. As I listened to your presentation, I got the impression that that expansion of 234 has already occurred. There would not be any more expansion of 234. Am I correct?
So, and Kim, feel free to add in here if you know more, but my understanding is it's already on the plan to widen 234 to 6 lanes all the way to I-95. It is partially widened already. I believe there's a section that's not completed. But it's currently planned for in Prince William's existing transportation plan,
So then.
but not funded.
Yes, okay, and that would be pretty much this picture here, because what I want to do is push that out to people, so I want to give more than just my opinion, I want to have.
So you're saying 234 south
You
of
bet.
this, so not this area, down further?
Yeah, further south from 95 on up as you head west, that's the part.
Yeah, and if you look at the existing plan, Karen, that will show.
Okay, all right, let me switch.
And just as an FYI, Montclair HOA has signed a letter in opposition to PW Digital Gateway.
Oh, thanks, appreciate it.
I live in Montclair, let's talk.
Yeah.
And while she's pulling that up, I'll just say that there's 3 components that I believe are left for this.
This map?
Yeah. So if you look at, if you zoom in on 234 south of, going down towards I-95, I know it doesn't go all the way to the bottom, but you can see it's 6 lanes there.
It's hard to do.
There you go. It's actually probably, yeah, it's not. But it's 6 lanes. You'll just have to trust me. You can always just go onto the Prince William County webpage and look up their current transportation plan, or just Google it. But it's 6 lanes planned for. But there's a section, I believe, that's not completed yet. The other components, though, I'll just mention, there's two other things that have to happen to complete this Outer Beltway, and that's when you'll start to really see the truck traffic and everything increase, and that's the 234 North Extended, which will bring 234 over I-66 and up to Pageland Lane. That has to be completed, and once that's done, then Pageland Lane being widened, and then potentially going up to Saunders.
Thanks.
And I can just add that it's also my recollection, anybody here correct me if I'm wrong, that Supervisor Maureen Cadigan had the 6 laning removed from the comp plan, but staff never actually did it, and nobody knows. And that's why it's in there. So, please come on up. You can use that one, you can use this one.
Yes.
Are all the changes for money?
Are all the changes for money? Yeah.
Who wants to take that one?
Yeah.
The short answer is yes. Probably. Huh? I think she deserves it. Yes.
More robust answer, we don't know what the answer is.
So, you can go ahead and sit down, Maureen.
Thank you, it's a great question.
It is a very good question, it really is, because a lot of the development that we're seeing being proposed in the Rural Crescent, I mean, some of it is housing, which we all need to live in houses, right? Some of it is data centers, which we all have cell phones, we all need our cell phones to pick up data, and we need the internet. I'm sure you use the internet in school and things like that. So these are uses that we need. So it's not like we don't need the uses. The question is, do we need to sprawl them out all over the landscape? Or do we have places where we can put them? And that's where the money aspect comes in. That's where your question, I think, gets its answer, is yes, it's about certain developers wanting to make more money. They want to change that equation. There's an equation that kind of goes into when a developer is building their land, and it's the cost they have to put into it. So it's the cost of the land, it's the cost of other things, but that cost of the land goes way down when they purchase agricultural land, because agricultural land is selling for, like, I'm just making up numbers here, just spitballing, but $5,000 an acre. But that industrial land that's already available for data centers and is ready to go is like $1 million an acre. And they don't want to pay $1 million an acre. Instead, they want to flip that agricultural land they bought for $5,000 an acre and then sell it. get that rezoned, get that replanned for those data centers or for whatever other use, and then flip it and make a lot of money. So your answer is yes. Most of this is for money.
And that's specifically easy to understand is exactly what's going on with the land outside Prince William Forest Park and the legislative borders. Come on up. Remembering that we're gonna have manners, right?
Say what?
Yeah.
One here and one here, what'd you say?
Oh, manners.
Harry Wiggins, I live on the Occoquan Reservoir.
Speak up, please.
Okay.
Harry Wiggins, as Ms. Jefferson noted, I live on the Occoquan Reservoir, 3525 Wilson Trail. There's a couple things I want to say. One, the stormwater management in the county is horrible beyond belief. We pay a separate stormwater management fee. Until several years ago, that stormwater management fee went to family and friends of supervisors. Literally. Who wanted projects done on the property, and they got it done. Another thing I want to point out, I made a little chart out, or the green thing out there. I went out on the Occoquan Reservoir Sunday and took some pictures of RPA violations. And those are just some of them. There's over 100 RPA violations on the Occoquan Reservoir. When Chairman Connaughton was chairman, got started, I brought it to his attention, nothing was done. When Chairman Stewart was chairman, I brought it to his attention, nothing was done. I brought it to the attention of the premier conservation alliance in the county, nothing was done. And there is at least 2 data center footprints around on the Prince William side of the Occoquan that where the RPA has been violated, not restored, nothing done about it. Thank you.
So is Chair Wheeler doing something about it, Harry?
Yes.
Okay.
As a matter of fact.
Great.
Well, maybe not along the Occoquan, because we do have violations along the Occoquan, and it's been routine for years. And normally what the county does is they say, well, it's already done, it would do more damage to take it out and fix it, so we're going to approve it retroactively, and the violation stands. But in the long run, what it does is it gives a lot of examples that better to ask for forgiveness than permission, and it just leads to more violations. I do encourage you all to pay attention to the presentations at the water workshop at the board meeting at 2 o'clock on the 7th, next Tuesday. And in the presentation, Fairfax Water includes some of those pictures. So who else? Come on up.
I'm Steve Ward, I'm from Haymarket. As I grasp the full scope of all this radical change, radical threats to our groundwater, radical changes to stormwater runoff, radical claim on our grid, we haven't even talked about that. What's going to happen to power costs in the future as we try to grow and as we change the sources of our power that they now have claimed on our grid? When I think about how all of this comes together and how it's all happening at once, it seems like in every direction these radical changes to our security. This seems less like a land use plan to me and more like some bizarre suicide attempt on the part of the county to undermine how we live. So my question is, why is this happening now, all at once? Maybe you have Piedmont, Julie. Any idea at all about why this is all coming together at once?
Oh, Rob, you want to take it?
Okay, sure.
We had a town hall meeting in Belmont Bay 2 Saturdays ago. Supervisor Vega came over and held it in Belmont Bay, and it's in Margaret Franklin's district. Margaret wasn't pleased about it. But Supervisor Vega wanted to express her opposition to the huge development going on in Belmont Bay, and she also mentioned the data centers and the Rural Crescent, and mentioned the whole aspect of what's been going on. At that meeting, I had done some research on VPAP, which is I guess a citizens-backed organization that tracks campaign contributions to all the supervisors and all the elected officials. And I had dinner with a developer about 2 weeks before, that's very active in the eastern part of the county. And he told me the story about how they didn't want Frank Principi in there anymore, and all the developers, realtors, builders got together, and I looked at Margaret Franklin's campaign contributions. And I read them off at the town hall meeting. It was, I was told, and it was very obvious because there were so many contributions for $734 from multiple builders, developers, and people that had all pitched in $734. There was a $10,000 contribution from a realtor, and there was a $2,500 and $1,500 contribution. You know, I would urge everybody to look at who's contributing to the board of supervisors in all parties. That doesn't bother me at all, but then how those contributions seem to be affecting their positions on these issues. What happened in Prince William County is we had a radical change in the board of supervisors. I'm not saying that that is the reason why all this is happening, but the board shifted directions. And this happened in Fairfax County years ago when Audrey Moore ran for the chairmanship of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. She ran on an environmental platform and threw out the developer-backed candidates. And this time it's reversed because mainly it's the Republicans that are supporting. This is a political issue. I hate to say it. It shouldn't be. I said that at one of our other meetings that we had. But it's political, and you can track the campaign contributions, and you can track how things are going in the county. And I would encourage everybody to do that. Publicize it. You know, put them out on the web pages. I'm going to put ours out on the Belmont Bay web pages. They'll probably get taken down. But and it's just not Supervisor Franklin. It's all of who's backing them, who's contributing to them, and we need to pay attention. We need to publicize it so that it goes well beyond this group, so that all the people in the county know what's really going on.
I have one thing to add too. This shouldn't be a political issue. It really shouldn't. This is about good land use. I'm a Democrat. I'm a progressive Democrat. Harry used to be the chair of the Prince William County Democratic Committee. I used to be chair for the Potomac District. I'm a former spokesperson for the Democratic National Committee, y'all. I work for the National Party as a spokesperson. It's really hard for me to have to oppose people that I helped elect, the people who I supported. I don't like being a maverick. I don't like coming out to these events. I'm a single mom. I live in Montclair. I rather spend my weekends in the lake. I rather spend weekends doing scout stuff with my son. I am tired of having to come to events like this. I'm tired of coming to the board. I'm tired of doing all this. But if I don't hold them accountable, who will? Democrats, we like to talk about, we love, Liz Cheney. How did we start loving Liz Cheney? But she says things that are evident to us. She says things that no one in her party wants to hear because they want to turn a blind eye. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry, I can't turn a blind eye. I cannot turn a blind eye. Wrong is wrong. I don't care if you have a D or an R behind your name. Wrong is wrong. So I just want to say that to kind of depoliticize this, because there are a lot of Democrats and progressives out there in this crowd who are disappointed with the Board of County Supervisors. And I'm sure on the other side, there are a lot of people who are disappointed with Pete Hamlin, who has abandoned, if he hadn't, principles. So I want to be clear. This is an important issue that impacts the county. And it has a bigger impact. I know it's kind of weird. It's like, and you should go out there. I'll take you out there. It is yonder, okay? We're talking about the other side of the county from Montclair. But what happens out there impacts us. And it impacts us deeply. That's why I'm here tonight. Again, I'd rather be home. I have other things to do with my time. But I'm here. But I just want to know that this should not be a political act. I'm a Democrat. I stand for a lot of people on the board. I've been accused of using Republican talking points, even though these are some of the same talking points that I'm hearing from the Corey Stewart has used, even though Marianne Gagnon supported Corey Stewart and is a huge Trump Republican. The way they've been twisting themselves into contortions to justify PW Digital Gateway and some of these other land use issues to me is insulting, it's embarrassing. And I'm not gonna not question, I'm not gonna not care about the community because I'm a Democrat and because I'm afraid of questioning people in my own party. I'm sorry, that's just not who I am. No one should be like that.
I'm just going to add one small other aspect to this. There's also this is not just happening in Prince William County. We're starting to see a lot of road pressure in other places too. We're seeing it in Loudon, we're seeing it in Albemarle. So I just want to make you guys aware that there's also a big market pressure right now. I almost think it's delayed from what was actually, because the interest rates are starting to go up, and actually I think the housing market might be heading towards a recession, but this is very often happens where the localities are a little bit behind what's actually happening in the market. So they're reacting to kind of what was happening 2 years ago with the boom in the market, and they're just like, ooh, we gotta open up land, we've gotta rezone, we gotta get some land out there. That's one aspect. Another aspect is data center boom. There's this huge data center boom. They're responding to that market, and they're trying to capture some of it. And then lastly, there's a lot of money going into infrastructure right now, a lot of transportation funds, and they want to capture that. So just one last one. Come on up.
And if you want to talk, there's some chairs over here. You can just come sit here and be right by the microphone. Welcome.
I'm Kathy Kulik, and I'm the Vice Chair of the HOA Roundtable in Prince William County. Great program, thank you very much, wonderful speakers. Heard them before. I wanted to make a comment on this very subject. One of the reasons you're seeing it happen so fast is the type of industry that is coming. The data center industry has the deepest pockets on the planet now. There is no more well-funded industry, and there never has been. This one is almost limitless. A lot of it has to do with the market now going to e-commerce, remote work. There isn't anything that's got a deeper financial pocket than them, and they can do a lot. The other thing about the industry is it likes to keep a low profile. Data centers are popping up everywhere, hardly anybody knows about most of what's going on. So we're starting to see them because the buildings are big, their impacts are huge, and we heard about the Potomac Technology Park and the Prince William Digital Gateway. When they get way too big, the news gets out, and they don't like that. So part of the market, the deep pocket industry, it's money that people can't say no to. But I do have a question for Kyle about the Potomac Technology Park. It's an easy one. Has that comprehensive plan amendment for that area passed already? You mentioned rezoning, and that's why I'd like to.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. So about a year ago in March, there was an amendment to the comprehensive plan called the Independent Hill Small Area Plan. That basically included that 50 or so acre parcel and essentially set it aside for redevelopment. So if you go back and look at, there's a very large map of the county in the back right-hand corner of the room that includes that 52 acre parcel as set aside for data center development. The next stage of that is the land has to be rezoned. Okay. And so inside of the county's comprehensive plan, the parcel is designated as data centers. Now the land has to be rezoned, which is kind of its own separate process. What I will kind of point out is that Independent Hill Small Area Plan, the small tweak to the comprehensive plan, was well fought in the community. The National Park Service was on the record opposing that decision. Quantico Marine Corps Base was on the record opposing that decision. The entire environmental community was on the record opposing that decision, and it kind of went forward anyways. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does answer my question. It leads me into another comment, which is the importance of proposing data centers before the comprehensive plan amendments are passed is critical. It's like the head of the snake. If you wait till rezoning, it's very, very hard to stop it. And the reason is because the developers are very happy to take the county to court and say, you've already designated this land for this, all right? And they often prevail, and there are reasons for that. So if we just stop something, you have to stop it at the CPA, you have to stop the land designation, and even then, you're probably still fighting for the next 100 years, but let's just take it one step at a time. So, and so fighting the Potomac Technology Park is critical, but it's going to be harder. Thank you.
So, it is going to be a hard fight, but I do want to say that I do feel like we're making progress on that front at the Potomac Technology Park. You know, granted, there's a lot that goes into this opposition, but the addition of the 10.25 acres of highly erodible soils and then another 3 or so acres of wetlands is causing angst among the board. Like, they are aware that that is of concern. And then the other thing of note that's like interesting is if you look at the county map, as I mentioned earlier, it's a total of 161 acre parcel, and the county set aside like 120 of that acres and told the landowner, you have to donate that to the park. That was like the agreement. And I haven't seen that follow through. And so I think the board is maybe a little bit hesitant to approve this proposal without kind of the landowner holding up that end of the bargain. So I do know that some of our advocacy efforts are at least ringing alarm bells that these are serious concerns. I know the Park Service has continued to express opposition. So I don't want to say, like, we've got this one in the bag, but I do feel like the advocacy effort that we are doing, that everybody is doing, I feel like we're making some progress. And I think the same can be said about the Princeton Digital Gateway in the sense that they wanted this to be done 6 months ago. So keep up the work.
And let's strengthen it.
I would want to piggyback on what Kyle said. It's all well and good for conservation associations and alliances and coalitions and organizations to make statements to the board. But that isn't what is going to sway them. They need to hear from the people. They need to hear from the voters. And it would be very easy for us to convince ourselves that because Kyle Hart said it's looking good, that I don't need to go down to the board, or I don't need to write a letter to the editor, or I don't need to send an email. And that is totally false. The board pays attention when new faces, new names, and lots of people show up and speak up. And that's what we have to do. And it's not just about one issue, it's about all of these issues. They need to hear that we know that there are a lot of issues that we take exception to, and that we're holding them accountable for doing the right thing for the people of this county, not the wrong thing.
Thanks, Karen.
Take this off so I'm a little clearer. My name is Peter Glyer. I started getting interested. Kyle, there was something on Bonner Farm back in December, I think, the ish. And so I started writing letters to congressmen and all this sort of stuff saying, hey, please get interested, so forth. I second your suggestion. Each person here, each person needs to write personally to their supervisor. 1. Number two, each person needs to go to the county board of supervisors meeting. There's always an open mic. You get to speak for 3 minutes. You start talking, the color on the board with numbers is green, then it turns yellow, and it turns orange, and then red. You have 3 minutes. Please, please say, I am opposed to whatever you want to say, but you have to say it. You have to go in person. They normally meet on a Tuesday. The 7 o'clock is a very good time. You sign up, then they'll call you forward for your 3 minutes. Please use that time. Thank you.
And I agree, a lot of why Kyle is feeling hopeful, but it's not over till it's over, and things can change. It's because people...
I don't want to leave people with like this doom and gloom situation, right? Like, keep up the good work, we're making
Yes, I
progress.
think that's the thing, keep up the good work until it's closed.
Yeah.
And tell me, Clancy.
I'm Clancy Quick from Lake Ridge Occoquan Civic Association. And I wish that what everybody was saying was true. But I can tell you, Kyle may remember when we had the public hearings on the data center over there by the park, the universal opinion of over 100 citizens that night, who were mostly new people, was it was a bad idea. And you know how much attention they paid to it? Zip. They don't care what you say, because once you've been bought, what you say is no longer relevant. I can take the place that want to make a difference is with the planning commission, and better than that, the staff. When this stuff comes up and the staff is working on it, you can ask to go talk to the staff and bring your suggestions to the staff and tell them what you think, because the staff really runs this whole place, whether you like to think of it or not. By the time it gets to the board of supervisors, it's too late. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen in public hearings in last year where people got up and said, no, don't do it. I mean, people, a lot of people, and in some cases, a couple hundred got up and said they didn't want to do something, and you could just see them roll their eyes and decide that they were going to do what they were told to do. So they're your obedient servants of whoever their masters are, and I have no idea who their masters are. But you, if you want to make a difference, do it early. You got to get started early. You got to work with the staff early. You got to work with the planning commission. That way, a dumb decision doesn't get to the board of supervisors to make. And you can make a difference if you do that. And I was going to just pass on one other thing to you. The UOSA, which is the sewage treatment plant on the northwestern part of the county that does Fairfax and Prince William, 90% of the water you drink in the Occoquan comes out of that place in the summertime. So,
40 million
and I have to admit, Prince William and Fairfax together spent $1 billion extra building that plant so it would produce drinking water, quality water. And it's the only reason you have any water around here in the summertime, because when it gets dry. Not tonight being one of those nights.
Speaking of water.
Speaking of stormwater, that's something we need to consider, that the foresight of the engineers who work with our service authority, with the Fairfax Service Authority, plan that as a key element of our drinking.
Thanks, please.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And give them a hand if you ever see them. And if you see somebody from the Service Authority, tell them thank you for your service. That's the only reason you drink it.
And a good time for your comments to repeat myself here is next Tuesday at the board meeting as part of the water workshop. Which will have water experts here at the topic.
Hi, I'm Jeff from Logan. I was really concerned about the Independent Hill entrance there to the park, and I was wondering okay, I was just wondering what the plans might be for northern entrance to the park.
They're working on it.
Pardon?
I can actually take that.
Yeah, can you come, because if we can communicate that to the Board of Supervisors and how disruptive it would be not to be able to have the northern entrance, that we need to all work, the federal, state, and local, all have to work together in harmony to make that happen. It increases the usability and accessibility of the park from all people at all stages of life, all social categories. It opens up the park for everybody. And when the park was first built, it was there to be a wilderness and camping experience for his city youth as part of the goal. Thank you.
Yeah, so the park has some pretty exciting plans, and Ken and I obviously work closely with the park. So the park it's basically like, it's sort of a three-pronged approach to that portion of the park. So for those that know, there is no northern access to Prince William Forest Park off of Route 234. A lot of that, frankly, is due to National Park Service funding concerns. The project kind of in question, there's a large, I think about 100-car parking lot plan off of Route 234 that the park is sort of eyed for access off of that portion of the park. I believe that the park is working in tandem with, I think, the county Department of Transportation to submit what's called a FLAP grant, a Federal Land Access Program grant, for that proposal off of Route 234. The parcel in question, the 161-acre parcel, their potential plan for that parcel would include, as you probably know, there's a walking and biking path off of 234, so they would like to bring a path from that, like connect sort of the northwestern portion of the park, and then they also have basically a full build out of the trails program kind of on the back burner that I think they've priced out at like $1 million that they haven't had the money to do. So their full vision for like that portion of the park is a large 100-car parking area off of Route 234, entrance from that walking, jogging trail, biking trail into the park, and then a full extension of the trails network into the northwest corner of the park. So that's like the long-term vision. And I think that's a pretty cool, exciting opportunity for Prince William County. I don't want to say like none of that is possible if you build data centers there, but the chance goes down, you negatively impact the resource, and the long-term health of the park is negatively impacted. So.
One other thing, and I'll just close with a funny story, which is sadly funny. Years ago, Prince William County had a water tank that was in Montclair, right across the street on the other side of 234 from Prince William Forest Park. And they didn't want to impact the houses with an unattractive water tank. So they were going to move it across the street and put it in the legislative boundaries of Prince William Forest Park, on a parcel the park was planning to purchase. And they really stood up for it, that's what they wanted to do, and the supervisors were like, what? What's the problem? We'll put your name on it. And could not understand why that was so important that that area be protected. So when you're talking to people and you're making your comments, realize that some of our elected officials really just do not understand at that very basic level. So who wants to make the last comment here? Me, I guess. Thank you for coming, everyone. We're so glad to see you, and we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday and at other meetings and reading your letters to the editor. Thank you.
clean drinking water from the Occoquan Reservoir, historical preservation, welcoming national parks, and a good quality of life means local government must support sustainable land use policy. Prince William County is at a crossroads. With growing opposition in the community, county-wide, as well as regionally, we stand united as an obstacle to greed and developer handouts that will result in the loss of our best smart growth land use, the Rural Crescent. As recently as 2016, the Pageland Lane residents advocated to protect the beauty and history of Pageland Lane from becoming a victim to expensive sprawl development. This is a 6-year-old quote from an article in Bacon's Rebellion as the fight began to stop the Bi-County Parkway. Quote, "The three amigas live on Pageland Lane because they like living in the country. While development pressure from Washington has penetrated even deeper into the Virginia countryside to the north and south, building has been limited in an area of northwestern Prince William known as the Rural Crescent. The wooded hills around the Manassas Battlefield are dappled now with the yellows and umbers of autumn. The fenced-in fields beside Snyder's house are dotted with horses and geese. Her farm, where her family has lived for 6 generations, was the scene of military maneuvers in the Second Battle of Manassas, and Snyder has hosted Civil War reenactments there. Conservation is in her blood. Indeed, the Snyder name is synonymous locally with historical preservation." End quote. Fast forward to today, and the draw of big money per acre that data centers are willing to pay has those same landowners folding up their preservation tent in exchange for the promise of $1 million an acre, asking the rest of us to ignore the robust data center opportunity zone in already zoned industrial areas of the county. Proposals being put forward have industrial and data center proliferation consuming thousands of acres and spreading across the county. The mobility plans in the Comprehensive Plan Update are taking us in the wrong direction. Instead of driving less, these plans make us more car-dependent. From an April 25, 2022 article in Greater Washington, the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, NVTA, will make multi-billion-dollar decisions this year on the region's transportation future. Analysis from the Coalition for Smarter Growth, CSG, finds that the agency's massive highway expansion plans would fuel increased levels of driving, on top of the additional trips anticipated from population growth. Instead of helping Northern Virginians drive less, the proposed 1,200 miles of new pavement would make the region more car-dependent. Vehicle miles traveled, VMT, would increase up to 42% on Loudoun's highway network, significantly more than the county's rate of population growth, and up to 60% on Prince William's non-interstate highways, almost 3 times the rate of its population growth. What does this really mean to everyday citizens? We pay for unnecessary road infrastructure and its maintenance to line the pockets of landowners and developers. This county is proposing stupid growth, not smart growth, by proposing data center proliferation and high-density residential sprawl in rural areas with no infrastructure. This board is incentivizing more cars and noisy truck traffic on roads. Instead of sticking to the data center opportunity zone, the Board of Supervisors has replanned for data centers, rather than good mixed-use land use opportunities for affordable housing with walkable communities, signaling that they are willing to trade data center blight for our natural and cultural resources that sustain your quality of life. Has anyone noticed the multi-million-dollar Interstate 66 project? How is Metro coming to Gainesville along there? Via a tunnel? With a price tag of billions? The future map is more than simply unrealistic. It is selling misinformation and attempting to use that to support out-of-control residential sprawl throughout the county, but especially in the Rural Crescent, where 2-lane roads are the transportation network. Don't be fooled by their ethereal namesake. Villages and hamlets are simply another name for mixed-use development. Housing and commercial slapped together that will incentivize sprawl growth and require costly citizen tax dollars to build and maintain infrastructure, like roads, schools, and fire and rescue. The village of Nokesville doesn't need, nor will it benefit from development sprawl, redirecting it away from the village that it already is. The Woolsey Hamlet would bring dense development along the journey through hallowed ground byway, not protecting the history, but rather eliminating it and paving it over. The Catharpin hamlet is planned next to the Digital Gateway Data Center alley on Pageland Lane. People are literally scrambling to sell out to avoid the visual and auditory impacts of data center blight in rural areas. Greenwich Hamlet is located in a historical overlay. Once again, the premise that you pave over your natural and cultural resources belies common sense. In a time when we can ill afford to lose the remaining working family-run farms in Prince William County, the Haymarket Activity Center would destroy a 90-year-old multi-generational working farm. If this county means what it says in the sustainability goal from the Comp Plan update, quote, "The objectives outlined in this focus area are aimed at establishing Prince William County as a leader in sustainability through expansion of agriculture and agritourism, land conservation and preservation, promotion of clean and renewable energy consumption, increased focus on recycling and reuse of materials, and finally, preservation of the county's rich and diverse cultural history." End quote. This proposal is in complete opposition to that goal and plan. If one looks at the names of the developers benefiting from these land use proposals to develop high-density housing under the scheme of land preservation, you'll find the usual who's who list of suspects. The reality is that unless the promise of open space preservation includes a credible third-party land trust, just like the current threats to other saved green areas in the county that are now fighting high-density housing encroachment, there is no real land preservation. It's just more high-density housing sprawl under a fancy new name. Sustainability is not only the antidote to mitigating the impacts of climate change, but also the antidote to the division people are feeling in our communities. We are one Prince William. If we destroy our natural and cultural assets, everyone suffers. If we protect them, everyone benefits. The Rural Crescent was adopted 22 years ago as our best smart growth land use tool, when we had little idea what challenges we would be facing today. Now is the time to reinforce that forward-thinking plan, not to urbanize and pave everything over. Once it's gone forever.